See if I can get my microphone to work. Here we go. Good evening. Welcome, everyone, to the special closed session meeting of Monday, May 13th, 2024. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 5:30. Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Here.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Here.
Mayor Infante.
Here.
Thank you.
If you'd join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, at this point in time, would you introduce the closed session, and then we'll have public comment for it, please?
Well, we introduce it before we go to recess. The city holds this closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8 to discuss real property negotiations, including price and terms regarding 425 First Street, Solvang, California, APN 13912-024, with its agency negotiator, the city manager, Randy Murphy. The party the city may negotiate with is Jamison Elias Holdings Limited. And also, this closed session is being held pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D4 to discuss initiation of one potential case.
Thank you very much. I have one public comment. Ms. Elamine, if you would come to the front, please.
My name is Denise Elamine, and I'm here. The first thing I want to say, this is a closed session, and I'll say it in the open session also, is that this is America, and I pledge allegiance to the American flag, not the Denmark flag, and I'm not Danish, and I am not, none of us follow the Danish rules here. So this is just called Solvang, but it is America where we follow American rules. And it appears to me that we're getting kind of confused about these flags, which one becomes more important. So I just wanted to throw it out to you because that's what I'll be on a tangent about in open session. Closed session. We're buying more property. We bought 410 in the beginning when you guys first sat here, all for 5 of you. We bought 410, and that was supposed to be for the transit center that Roger said is why we purchased this property that's been sitting vacant there ever since you guys took office almost 2 years ago. November, January, it'll be 2 years, so I guess a year and a half. It's still sitting vacant. There is no transit center. We only have like 3 people who ride the bus, and the bus people are trying to get more money out of us. I'm wondering, what are we gonna do with the 425, and why are we buying more and more property here? What's going on? Are we trying to keep the BIPOC community from buying property here? Are we trying to keep the rainbow flag out of Solvang? Are we buying up this property for hateful reasons? I don't know. The other thing is that we have another suit here. Somebody's anticipating litigation with us. Why would they sue Solvang? It is such a wonderful town. Everybody gets along here. Everybody likes everyone. Why would someone want to sue Solvang, California? I'd like to know, but it's in a closed section, so I have to wait until it becomes an open session, and then I guess I'll find out. But I just want to let you know that this is America. I do not pledge allegiance to a Danish flag. I am not in Denmark, so please don't treat me like I'm in Denmark. Please recognize I'm Boy Scouts of America. Come on with it. I think they're going to change your name. You're just going to be the Scouts of America. So please, America, okay? If not, put a Denmark flag, a Danish flag up in there, and let's pledge allegiance to the Danish flag. And I'll see you guys in the open session.
Thank you. Do you have anybody else that wants to speak at this time?
There's nobody on Zoom. So at this time, we will recess to closed session. Thank you. All right, we'd like to come back from closed session. And Ms. Attorney, if you would announce the closed session actions, please.
Thank you, Mayor. There are no reportable actions from either of the closed session items.
Thank you. In that case, we are adjourning the closed session at this point. We'll open the public session in about 4 minutes. Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting, Monday, May 13th, 2024. Calling the meeting to get to order at 6:30 p.m. Roll call, please, Ms. Clerk.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Here.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Here.
Mayor Infante.
Here.
Thank you.
Mr. Jim Enderle, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, sir. Okay, this evening we have a proclamation that I'll be reading. This is the National Public Works Week, May 19 to 25 of 2024, called the Advancing the Quality of Life for All. Whereas, public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Solvang. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without dedicated efforts of public works professionals, who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and private sector, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the city of Solvang to gain knowledge of and maintain an ongoing interest in understanding the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas public works operations is executed by the city of Solvang through our Public Works and Utilities Department. And whereas the year of 2024 marks the 64th annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that I, Mayor Mark Infante, along with the City Council of the City of Solvang, California, do hereby proclaim the week of May 19th to 25th, 2024 as the National Public Works Week. And I urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in recognizing our public works and utility professionals, engineers, managers, and employees for their substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and advancing the quality of life for all. So in witness thereof, I have hereby set my hand and caused the official seal of the city of Solvang to be affixed on this 13th day of May, 2024. Do we have somebody? Roger, are you going to be the representative? Oh, that's great.
I was going to get up and say a couple words real quick.
Oh, please do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to take, this is something APWA, American Public Works Association, does every year. We've kind of missed the ball last couple of years, but we wanted to take advantage this year. And I wanted to take advantage of this time to recognize some of our public works employees who showed up here and took the time out of their day to receive recognition. I want to recognize their hard work. Because a lot of times they don't get recognized unless there's something going on. There's something going wrong. It's like, hey, why did this get swept or why did this get done, that sort of thing. So, I want to, recognize that they are doing a really good job. And tomorrow, these guys are going to be here bright and early cleaning the sidewalks. Or after 2 straight weekends of big, major events. So, the sidewalks are a big events, so in power wash. So it's stuff like that. They're there doing this work long before we even arrived at the city, or we're up and about and going about our business. So I just want to make sure I recognize them. So we have Raymond Cano. He's our maintenance supervisor. Daniel Ogeson. Cole Phillips is one of our new, he's our engineering tech. Stand with the mayor and get a picture.
Nathan up here too.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, I'm sorry, Nathan can't sit though, he's representing our utilities, our utility public works.
Come on over here. Who's gonna hold this? Come here. It's not me, it's you guys. You hold it. There you go. Roger, get up front here. Guys in the front here.
Old guy in front.
Yeah.
Ready? Yeah.
Here, 1, 2, 3. There we go.
Nice.
Thank you. Great job. You appreciate it. You keep that up here to Roger. I'm not sure who's gonna hang on to that. Who takes there? There you go. Thanks, guys. You bet. Cool.
The rest of this is boring, you guys can go ahead.
The rest of this is boring. You guys can get out of here. I want you to know that these are the people that keep this city running and are very, very important to this city. All right. At this point, I would like to bring up talk about the Central Coast Water Authority overview. Mr. Murphy, if you would introduce this, please.
Yeah, so we have Ray Stokes from CCWA here to do a presentation. I saw him do this at an ID1 meeting I was at a month or 6 weeks ago. And I asked him to reprise the event, so he agreed to do that. And take it away, Ray. I'll advance the slides as you give me direction.
Okay. Good evening. Happy to be here to give you, can you hear me okay? To give you an overview of the Central Coast Water Authority and the role that we play in helping meet the city of Solvang's water needs. And so I've got a PowerPoint presentation, if you want to pull that up and we can.
There we go.
Okay, there we go. Next slide, please. So the presentation outline is, I'll provide an organization overview, structure and staffing of CCWA, an overview of the State Water Project, the CCWA facilities, our water deliveries, a little bit of financial overview, current issues, and some of our current goals. Next one. Overview, structure, and staffing, next. So our mission statement is to provide San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara counties with reliable, high-quality supplemental water. Next one. Our objectives are to treat and deliver water through the Coastal Aqueduct to San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara counties, minimize environmental impacts and protect the environment during operations of our facilities, and cost-effectively operate and maintain our facilities. Next. Ensure our water supply meets or exceeds health and safety standards, work with the Department of Water Resources and other state, federal, and local agencies to achieve our mutual objectives, and assist our project participants in their efforts to reduce groundwater overdraft. So a little bit of background of CCWA. We were formed in 1991 after a successful vote in Santa Barbara County to bring state water facilities into Santa Barbara County. Prior to that, there were no facilities to bring state water into Santa Barbara County. We were formed as a joint powers authority in 1991. We have 13 member agencies in Santa Barbara County. 8 are public member agencies, 1 associate member, Vandenberg Space Force Base, and then the 3 private entities. We also treat and deliver state water to 11 entities in San Luis Obispo County. The City of Solvang contract, San Ynez River Water Conservation District, Improvement District Number 1, I'll say ID Number 1, has a contract with CCWA for 2,200 acre-feet of state water project water, and then the City of Solvang has a subcontract with ID Number 1 to provide up to 1,500 acre-feet of ID Number 1 state water project water. The City of Solvang is not a direct member of CCWA, but you are a subcontractor through ID Number 1's contract. So our board of directors is comprised of our 8 public member agencies that are appointed to our board from their respective entities. And you can see there on this on the right, it's based on roughly their voting percentages on our board are roughly based on their contract amount. We meet monthly on the 4th Thursday of every month. This map shows a little bit of the facilities. If you notice up in the right corner, you'll see the California Aqueduct. You've probably seen the California Aqueduct driving down I-5. So you can see it up there in the northern part of up there by Kings County. The coastal branch branches off, and you can see those 3 dots. Those are 3 large pumping plants that pump water up to our water treatment plant, and then it flows down from our water treatment plant, gravity fed all the way through San Luis Obispo County, Guadalupe, Santa Maria, Buellton, Vandenberg, Solvang, and then of course for the South Coast agencies, Santa Barbara, Carpinteria, Montecito, and Goleta, they receive their state water. We pump it into Lake Cachuma, and they take it out of the lake. Next. So these are our project participants and their table A amount, their contract amounts with the state, with CCWA. You can see that our largest participant is City of Santa Maria, and then of course you can see that San Ynez River Water Conservation District has 2,000. They also have an additional 200 acre feet of drought buffer, which is not included on here. So our total contract amount with the State of California Department of Water Resources is roughly 45,000 acre feet per year. The next is the agencies that we provide water to in San Luis Obispo County. San Luis Obispo County is a separate state water project contractor, but we have a contract with them, or they do with us, I should say, whereby we treat and deliver their water to them through our water treatment plant. Next. This is just an organization chart. We have about 32 full-time employees at CCWA to operate all of our facilities. Next one. An overview of the State Water Project. Next. So the State Water Project is one of the largest water supply projects in the world. It is operated by the State of California Department of Water Resources. It serves about 23 million people, 750,000 acres of farmland. The total contract amount for all 29 State Water Project contractors is 4.2 million acre feet per year. Average deliveries, depending on the hydrology, is around 2 million acre feet per year. The annual budget is around $1.2 billion per year. The State Water Project facts, there are a number of storage facilities. There are about 32 storage facilities. Total reservoir storage is about 4.8 million acre feet. The largest reservoir is Oroville at 3.5 million acre feet. There are about 662 miles of canals and pipelines. There are 5 hydroelectric plants. The average energy generated by hydroelectric plants on the State Water Project are about 7.6 billion kilowatt hours. That's the 4th largest producer of energy in the state of California. And the State Water Project uses about 12.2 billion kilowatt hours per year. That's the largest single user of energy in the state of California. Coastal Branch facilities, you can see up in the right corner, those 3 pumping plants. You can see Devil's Den, Bluestone, and Polonia Pass. And the Coastal Branch is in the purple on the right. Again, so the water comes down the Coastal Branch up to our water treatment plant, which is the green area in the top. And then we have a buried pipeline that goes, as I stated earlier, that goes all the way down to Lake Cachuma. Next. The Coastal Branch facilities were constructed from 1994 to 1997. The DWR facilities are about 100 miles of pipeline, 3 pumping plants. Total cost was about $480 million. And then the CCWO facilities are about $115 million. We have, again, our water treatment plant, 43 million gallon per day water treatment plant, and about 42 miles of pipeline and other facilities. Jeez. So we, interestingly enough, operate and maintain the DWR-owned pipeline and related facilities. We're the first entity in the history of the State Water Project to actually operate facilities for the Department of Water Resources, because all of their facilities are mostly open channel canals, and then we're the first entity that had underground pipelines. So we save a significant amount of money by operating these facilities for DWR. So we have a JPA agreement with DWR. They allow us to operate their facilities for them. These 3 pumping plants, just a few pictures next. You can see this is with a Devil's Den pumping plant. So these are large pumping plants, and it's a pretty heavy lift to get the water up to our water treatment plant. So there's 3 of them that are required. This is just an example of the pumping plant during construction. Next one. And then our water treatment plant. Next slide. You can see it's a fairly large water treatment plant. Green times there, obviously. It's green right now, so with all the rain that we've had. Next. And then this is the San Ynez pumping plant. Next one. This is the plant. This is the pumping plant to get water into Lake Cachuma for the South Coast agencies. As I stated, as I stated before, we pump the South Coast Water Agency's water into Lake Cachuma, and then they take it out using the existing facilities they have. Yeah, no, I'm fine. Thank you. Next. And then this is just the Lake Cachuma discharge facilities. This is the floating barge to get the water to the South Coast agencies through the South Coast conduit. Our water deliveries, again, we have 13 project participants. We have a base amount of 39,000 acre feet plus a drop over of 3908 acre feet, and Goleta Water District has another 25. So our total contract amount with DWR is 45,000. And then this is a history of our water deliveries. You can see during the drought, when in 2013, it doesn't show on here, but we were able to acquire additional water supplies to allow all of our project participants to meet their needs during the drought. I think the State Water Project facilities proved their value, and that we are the only entity that has the ability to bring water in from any other area of the state. So we were able to acquire water supplies from other areas of the state and sell it and provide it to our participants. Next. Financial overview. We are pass-through agency. Any costs that we incur are passed on to our project participants. We have take-or-pay contracts, which means that our participants must pay their fixed costs, whether they take any water or not. We do have a step-up agreement. In the event that there's a payment default by one of our participants, the others must step up and cure the payment default. In the 30-plus year history of CCWA, we've never had a payment default. Next. Our costs are allocated by financial reach, which just basically means you only pay to get the water to where you are. If any facilities downstream of you do not pay for. So, for example, City of Solvang does not pay for costs associated with the St. Inez pumping plant because that's downstream of you. Next. Our budget next year, $60 million. The CCWA costs are about $15 million. The State of California DWR costs about $45 million. City of Solvang's fixed cost per acre foot is about $1,390 an acre foot. Your variable costs, the costs that you pay to get water delivered to you, are about $398 an acre foot. Your total estimated payments for 24-25 to CCW, or I should say to ID number 1, are about $2.3 million. Current issues. Fluctuating water delivery amounts. In DWR looks at hydrology, snowpack, rainfall, reservoir levels. All of these things come into play, and they determine how much water they can provide to the State Water Project contractors based on the available hydrology, and then that's a percentage of your contract amount. 2021, they said they could only provide 5% of the contract amount. That was only matched, I think, in 2014 was the only other year where it was that low. So it was extremely low. In 2022, it went up to 15%. In 2023, it went up to 100%. We hadn't had a 100% allocation since 2006. And then currently, we are at 40% in 2024. So it highlights the variability in the hydrologic extremes that we're experiencing. It's much more volatile, certainly, than it ever was previously. So it's creating some interesting challenges for us. We've got increasing DWR costs. We've got large capital projects upcoming. There is significant subsidence in the San Joaquin Valley associated with groundwater pumping, which is causing a constraint on the ability of DWR to deliver water because the California aqueduct is experiencing compression and is creating an inability to fully utilize the full capacity of the California aqueduct. We need to store water when it's available and draw down on it when from storage banks. So we're actively looking at groundwater storage banks. We want to put the water away when it's available to us and then draw upon it when we need it. And then we're, as every single probably government entity in the state of California is dealing with succession planning. We've got many employees that are eligible for retirement. Next. Again, our goals for 24-25, approved by our board of directors, develop a succession plan for CCWA for the next 2 to 5 years, continue pursuit of water storage opportunities, pursue resolution of some outstanding DWR charge issues. They've charged us that we've challenged them on some issues, so we want to pursue full resolution of those and protect our interests. And then we need to execute an extension of a current warrant contract with the Bureau of Reclamation to deliver water into Lake Cachuma. I believe that is all. That is. Happy to answer questions.
Oh, excellent. Very quickly done. Thank you. Questions, anybody?
I have a question on the metrics of the one of the largest water projects in the world. Which metrics make it in that band?
Well, number one, it would be the facilities, coupled with the acre feet of water. Now, the Central Valley project in the state of California has a higher contract amount with their participants, but the facilities that traverse the entire state of California for the state water project certainly make it one of the largest projects in the world for moving and transporting water.
Infrastructure.
Correct.
With your infrastructure design and everything else, what are you doing for security, for hacking threats, for and other terrorist attacks?
We are required to undergo periodic audits, and we hire independent consulting firms to try to hack into our system, for example. And I'm happy to say that they've been unable to do that. They had stated previously that they had never had a system that they couldn't hack into, and so before they tried, they said that they were going to be able to hack into it, and they weren't. So that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be that way forever. So we're constantly having to upgrade that and working with our IT consultants to ensure that we've got the safeguards in place to avoid any issues with that.
I have one last question. If I understand your graph correctly, the agency hasn't really delivered to contract in volume the 45 million acre feet in the last 10 years. Is that right?
The 45,000, we have, in 2023, we had a 100% allocation, so we did have the ability to deliver full table A amounts if the demand was there, but the demand wasn't there.
But the fees don't vary.
No.
So just to be clear, the take-or-pay contracts cover the costs, but they never have a direct correlation except for 1 year, but that didn't actually happen, to how much water the agencies receive. Is
That's
that
correct. It's a take-or-pay contract.
So it is what it is, but what does the agency do to encourage conservation?
We don't encourage conservation because we are a wholesaler, so we leave it up to the retailers. So the city of Solvang, as a retail provider of water, would be responsible for administering a conservation program. Because if you have a certain amount of water that's available to you through CCWA, and your demand dictates that you need that water, we will provide that to you. But we don't actively engage in conservation efforts because we leave that up to the retailers.
Okay. Quick question, if I may. You suggested in here that 2023 was 100% allocation. 2024 currently is listed as a 40% allocation. In spite of all the rain, can I ask you why it's that low?
Good question. The projects are required to comply with regulations that are imposed by fish regulatory agencies. And so there have been a significant amount of fish that have been found at the State Water Project pumps. So it has impaired the ability of the projects to pump freely, because you would expect that with full reservoirs and the hydrology that we've seen this year, because I've asked this question multiple times in the state of California, we've got all this water that's sitting in these reservoirs, and we've got significant snowpack. We need something to be able to explain why we are at a 40% allocation, and it has to do with the regulatory agencies that are imposing pumping restrictions to protect fish species.
Bummer.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. Yes, sir.
So Ray, I just signed a check to ID1 for $2.1 million on Friday. That was their 23-24, and it projected to go up about 10% per next year based on your presentation. That money is just paying for the infrastructure and the water delivery. That has nothing to do with any lawsuits, any prior issues or whatever. I'm just getting confirmation from you. That's what it costs to get us the water.
So our costs are divided into fixed and variable costs. So that payment represents your fixed costs, which are costs that do not vary with the amount of water that's delivered to you. So no, those costs cover all of the costs that are paid to the state of California for all of their infrastructure costs and any costs that they pass along to us except for energy costs, coupled with the costs of CCWA, all of our administration costs in operating our facilities.
That's kind of like our fixed meter cost, and then our variable per gallon cost, or per 100 gallon, actually. No, to the residents, it's 100 cubic feet. Yeah. Okay. Last questions? Thank you very much.
Thank
That was
you.
an excellent presentation. I appreciate that.
Randy, next year use a Discover card, you get points.
Okay, so now, public communications on non-agenda and consent items. Ms. Clerk, if you would introduce that to us, please.
At this time, you may address the council on items not on the agenda and on consent. Time limit is 3 minutes. We will start with in-person public comments first.
All right, I have a request from Ms. Elamine.
Hi, my name is Denise Elamine. I am a Solvang resident. I am coming here today for a consent item, the one for April accounts payable. I want to make clear that we pay $340,000 to the sheriff department for one officer to patrol the Solvang. And I did see that we got a new car. So I just want to put that in the records so people will know that it's $248,340 a month for one police officer for Solvang, and this city council approved that. Another thing is that we are purchasing another piece of property, 425 First Street. We purchased 410 Second Street a year and a half ago, and it's still sitting vacant. And I want to know, why are we spending so much on property? What are we? I don't know what we're doing. I'd like to know why we're spending it. It was in closed session. My thing today is I am an American citizen, and I follow California American laws. And when we start this meeting, we pledge allegiance to the American flag. This is Solvang, and it is a Danish town. It is not Denmark. It is a replica. It is still in the United States of America, and the flag of the United States is what we represent here. All of the talk about the Danish flags, it should be talked in Denmark. The most important flag here is the American flag. So I want to point out that the Wonder Child business was thrown out over the rainbow flag issue. They're no longer there. And I noticed as soon as they boarded up and the ice cream place took over the lease, that the Denmark flag was placed up there. So I guess that meant that they have won. I guess when they came here to the America, I guess they just have to put their flag down because the Native Americans were already here. So once the Wonder Child business was run out over all the hatred here, it was replaced by a Danish flag. So please, let's just keep it with the American flag if you don't mind.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Dennis Beebe.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Thank you for your service to the community. Tonight I join a growing chorus of your constituents and visitors to Solvang to oppose Site C. I call it Site C because each time the developer revises his proposal, it changes its name. It's now called Wildwood with 100 units. I'd like to focus on parking tonight. Parking is Solvang's frequent issue that comes up whenever you poll your constituents. Parking is normally in the top 5. The developer has requested the city to waive their parking requirements. Their municipal code calls for a lot more than he's proposing, which is 1.5 parking spaces per unit. 100 units, yes. 150, magnanimously, he's offering 154. That's problematic. Your planning manager has already seen some discrepancies in the width of certain parking spaces and aisles between the parking spaces. If you applied the Solvang Municipal Code to 100 units of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom sizes, the requirement for parking spaces would be over 200, 222. And that includes, I'm going to say, wait, there's more, because the municipal code requires a parking space for visitors for every 5 units. That's 20. So we're talking about maybe 70 more parking spaces needed if the developer was to comply with Solvang code, an objective standard that was in place before he proposed his builder's remedy project. But let's consider reality. We've talked about his proposal, Solvang Municipal Code. Reality says there's a lot more cars per municipal family unit, probably at least 2 per unit. I mean, people got to work to apply to afford these market rates. So that adds up to 237 parking spaces. The developer is not offering enough parking spaces. At the very minimum, Solvang should deny his request to waive the requirement for Solvang parking spaces. They're just inadequate. And those were objective standards in place before Builder's Remedy ever appeared on the go. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Mr. Craig Kent?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Craig Kent. I'm here tonight to talk a little bit about pedestrian safety. I have been walking a lot more, gained a little weight during COVID shutdown, trying to get rid of it. I walk quite a bit around Solvang, down to the riverbed. I use the wonderful trail that I think Caltrans built along the highway to the high school. I walk to the market, the post office. I've discovered that the most dangerous thing that I do when I'm walking is cross the intersection of Alamo Pintado and Old Mission Drive. I've nearly been hit 3 times in the last 2.5 months. Twice with the vehicles crossing behind me that I could reach out and touch, and once 2 weeks ago, a vehicle I could have reached out and touched that crossed in front of me. With the developments that are coming, one of them mentioned Wildwood, we will see a lot more traffic, a lot more pedestrian crossings, a lot more bicyclists, and that represents an existential threat to the people that are using that intersection. The drivers get impatient. It takes about 25 seconds to cross the intersection from Old Mission Drive to the Nielsen Center walking, and I walk fairly well. Older people might take longer, or older than me. And then bicyclists, of course, can traverse that as a vehicle in the left-hand turn lane. So when we get more than one pedestrian there, the drivers get impatient and go out of turn or cross, trying to beat the other vehicles. I think that the city has an opportunity to gather information, level of service information, traffic counts, in order to assess the risk to pedestrians, and then to take measures to head off the potential risks to pedestrians and bicyclists and even drivers at this intersection, and I encourage you to do so. So thank you for letting me speak tonight, and have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Do you have anybody else in the public who wants to make a comment at this point? I don't see anybody on Zoom. Okay, so let's continue on and let's go with the city manager's report, please.
So I have a very brief report this evening. I want to remind our community that Waste Management has their quarterly cleanup this Saturday from 8 a.m. to noon. Parking lot 4, which is just down the street here from City Hall on Oak Street. Can get rid of a whole bunch of stuff. We have it posted on our website and our Facebook page for more information. We'll have a few brochures or handouts over here on the table. So take advantage of this. It's at no cost to city residents. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you very much. All right, let's go on to council comments, requests, section 53, 232.3, yada, 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 yada. Anybody on the council want to make reports on what they've been doing? Go ahead, Robert.
I'll start. I believe we had a pretty productive budget meeting this last week, and we'll deal with that on May 28th. Kind of want to make a shout out to some of the business owners here in Solvang that courtyards are not the highest foot traffic locations in Solvang, and people tend to go to the stores that are on streets, and they need to be lured into courtyards. So when you open a business in a courtyard, you're not going to have the foot traffic. We've had the rules and the guidelines for signage and A-frames, et cetera, for some time, and I just want to make it clear that knowing that it's something to think about when you lease space in a courtyard, that we have certain rules. And I would like to revisit those rules with community input on the neon signs, et cetera, and signage, because I get a fair amount of texts. Usually it's from when somebody has somebody they care about that has a business that received a citation, and they reach out to say, you know, why are you attacking business? And I don't think we're attacking business, but we have rules. So I really would like to kind of hone down or firm up our signage, if somebody hasn't already talked about this already, to see what we can do about some of the business owners that are upset about neon signs and A-frames, et cetera. So that's what I have.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, I want to report on attending the Econ Alliance Energy Forum. I attended as a guest of the PG&E. There is, by the way, opportunities for the community to tour the Diablo Canyon power plant. If anybody's interested, you can check that out at the PG&E website. And we discussed different challenges that we have about producing energy, there is still a lot of debate on what we want to do about fossil fuels. We rely on them for a lot of things, on a lot of different industries. There are different attempts to phase out fossil fuels, and also the optics have changed when it comes to nuclear energy. Of course, the potential for disaster is huge if they're not well managed. But on the other hand, they do produce a lot of energy for very little footprint. So that's what it was discussed, and there's also a lot of industries being developed when it comes to carbon credits. So that was interesting. The next Econ Alliance Forum is going to be on healthcare, so that will be coming up. And that being said, I second the need to upgrade the signage ordinance along with a lot of things on our code. So I look forward to that coming to council, of course, with community input.
Thank you.
Did they open the PG&E Diablo Canyon tours now to the public?
There is a way for the public to tour it, not just public officials, yes.
Yeah,
So,
that's a great tour. Should encourage people to go check it out.
I'd give it a glowing
Yeah.
review. Yeah.
Oh, pun intended.
A couple things on my hit list. I was invited and attended a AAP chapter meeting in Santa Barbara on the 9th. AAP is the American Association of Pediatrics. Interesting group, and First Five was there and a few other folks as it relates to adolescent development and safety. Also, I had conversations with our planning, or Parks and Recreation, trying to see what we might do and what kind of policies would help moving some of the events midweek, and how do we accomplish that, or if that's doable, whether it be motivating events to want to be here on a weekday as opposed to weekends, and kind of try and even it out a little further. Just so far this month, we've had 2 events back to back. So it's been, and that's not, our new policy was to have it not back to back. So that was one of my biggest takeaways from that. So, and then, that was it for the weekend events. Thank you.
I have a couple things to report. I did want to share that I attended the Measure U, the initial committee meeting for our Measure U kickoff, which is a group of volunteers dedicating their time to help oversee and make recommendations on how we are spending the additional tax income for the Measure U funding. And I thought they did a really responsible job and came together pretty thoughtfully. So want to shout out to that group and give them a big thank you for dedicating their time. I also attended the San Ynez Valley multimodal connector connector path public meeting, which was hosted in this room, and it was extremely well attended, and got the community awareness up leveled on what assessment work and potential design work would be done to connect the endpoints of the valley from Buellton to San Ynez, and how that might affect Solvang.
Thank you. Since the past city council meeting, the 3 weeks, it's been extremely busy for some of us. We had a mayor's meeting at Vandenberg Space Center. This was the mayors from Lompoc, Buellton, Solvang. Who else did we have there? Goleta, yeah. And Randy was there to make sure I didn't say anything too stupid. And Mr. Brown was there as well. The purpose of the meeting is to, because of all of the additional stuff that's going to happen, additional stuff, that was a technical term. There's going to be a lot of additional work happening at the Space Center. SpaceX is going to be building a facility out there. They're going to be launching a missile every week. They've got something 2 a week. They're gone up that much. So what they're saying is they're bringing in all this business. They're bringing in all these people. Where are they going to live? What's it going to happen to the real estate around here? So these are questions that the Space Force Base wanted the mayors to address and be aware of. Went to an economic development roundtable in Goleta, talked about a lot of the issues that's going on about the economic development. San Ynez River Water Conservation District meeting in Buellton. That was interesting. Went to a visit San Ynez Valley Spring Reception in Los Olivos, the SB CAG North Regional meeting we had here in this facility. The multimodal, it was talked about, alternative transportation meeting was the name I had for it, where they were bringing in basically the ideas of bicycle path from Buellton all the way out to 154. So there's a number of parties involved, but there were a number of residents here. It was a very good meeting. Last Wednesday, I think it was, we had a cyclemania in Solvang Park. I went down to see what was going on. The Solvang Rotary was down there and giving away bicycle helmets for people, for little kids. They had little helmets with flashing taillights or red lights on the back of the helmet, so you didn't hit a little kid on his bike. There was the grant funding meeting that Robert referred to, and that we'll be hearing about in the future, and the Econ Alliance Energy meeting that Claudia referred to. So it's been a very busy couple of weeks. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, may I add one more comment?
Yes, please.
I don't know if anybody else has, and I'd like all of your input. Whenever there's an event on a Saturday that goes back to the hotel, we're losing one night, I heard from 3 merchants in town that have storefront space, and they reach out to me whenever we have an event, and they do complain about it and think that it kills business because people don't stay 2 nights. They're staying 1 night, then the hotel, so it makes it slower on Sunday, et cetera. Have you guys heard any of this? Is this, any of you people brought it up to
Absolutely.
you?
Yeah.
Yep. And do we really think, do we know that having Saturday events hurts business overall for the entire weekend?
If I may interject, I think having this discussion would be off agenda. So
On agenda then.
if we can,
Let's discuss
if you,
it. I just wondering if anybody else had this come up, maybe we can put it on an agenda. I apologize.
there
Thank
is direction to bring something like that back, we certainly can.
you. Okay. So be it, and it's said, if we could do that, please.
Can we bring that back, please, Mr. City Manager,
Yeah.
and talk about it? I have not heard those issues, but I'd like to hear.
And
Okay.
the last thing about Mount Diablo, Diablo Canyon, if you do go, when I went in 2019, one of the group did not have a valid driver's license and spent 3 hours in a bus in the parking lot. So if you do go, take a valid driver's license.
Excellent. Okay.
I'm done.
Let's move on to item number 4, which is the consent items. We've already heard public comment on this, so at this point in time, I'd like to ask the council if anybody wants to pull any of these items or discuss any of these items? A typo? We'll just bring it up and we'll let Anna Marie know about it. And then we'll need a motion to accept the consent items as proposed.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent items on the agenda for A through F.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Arona?
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown?
Yes.
Mayor Infante?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. You want to bring up the typo now or just real quick so she's got that?
Page 47, mayor is spelled M-A-Y-O-R, not M-A-Y-R. Page 47.
Left out an O?
Left-
Oh, darn.
I was asking the same thing.
I don't want the title to be misconstrued on our esteemed mayor.
You have too much time on your hands, Dave.
Okay, let's move on, please, to item number 5. Madam Clerk, if you would introduce that to us, please.
Public hearing to consider adopting resolution number 24-1251, confirming and levying assessments for Solvang Mesa Landscape and Lighting Maintenance District number 2004-1 for fiscal year 2024-25.
Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. It's on.
Yeah, get closer to it.
It's on. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Good. All right. So this is the staff report for the Solvang Mesa Landscape and Lighting Maintenance District, assessment of, resolution of assessment confirmation. So as you know, this is the neighborhood of Skip Mesa, which is the only neighborhood in town that has a landscape and maintenance lighting district. And so this item is to actually assess the district. So the assessment process. So we've already done the first couple bullet points here. So the costs were reviewed and the budget was established for next year. We did adopt on April 22nd the initiation resolution, which initiated the preliminary engineer's estimate, approved the preliminary engineer's estimate, and then set the date for public hearing, which was today. So today is the public hearing. So thank you, Randy, for taking care of that. I was out sick, so I appreciate you taking care of that for me. So our action tonight is to open the public hearing, which we're here, and receive comments from the public, discuss it, and provide staff direction, and then if desired, you can adopt the resolution 24-1251, which will enact the assessment. And then the next steps, the assessment engineer coordinates with the county tax assessor's office. The assessment is set for the property tax roll, and then funds are transferred to the city. So this year, we recommended that the assessment be slightly increased by 2%, which is for a total per property of $1,388.02 per parcel. And again, that 2% covers an imbalance that we were seeing. So we're not doing any very large projects. We didn't do any very large projects last year, but our balance that we started with was about 2% less than what we had before. So we're looking to try to balance things out, understanding that next year there likely will be a bit more of an increase, mainly because the contractor is the contractor that performs a lot of the maintenance out there. Their contract is up at the end of this calendar year. So to end of summer, early fall, we'll be putting out a request for proposal and finding either finding a new contractor, and it's likely that because we're basically operating off of 2017 prices, so realistically, it's going to go up a bit. So, understanding that, so we want to try to maintain our fund balance as best we can. And then all 169 lots are assessed, and they all benefit from the LMD. And so our recommendation is, ask me anything you want. And I receive comments from the public and discuss and provide direction to staff. Close the public hearing, and then if desired, you can adopt the resolution. So with that concludes staff's presentation, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Council, anybody have questions at this point?
I think it was in your report. How many times has it gone up over the last 10 years?
Good question, and I don't have that exact number, but it's
How many
usually
times has it gone down in the last?
it's gone down once over the lifetime of the assessment. I do know that, and it's stayed the same 3 or 4 times. So for the lifetime of the assessment, it's gone up. Probably the last 15 years probably is about 10 times. So it generally does go up incrementally.
Roger, it just doesn't reflect the cost increases. Since you just put that metric out there for the last 10 years, we've increased once. But we've increased the water costs in the city of Solvang twice just in the last 2 years. 5% each time, so 10% total. But we're only increasing 2% here.
That's correct.
This is, what percentage of our costs is actual water consumption? Rough and tough. I mean, it's got to be a meaningful portion.
I would say the water cost itself, roughly 20 to 30% of the cost of the costs to the district. Contract. It's maybe a little bit less. I mean, the first 2 phases are high water users. The remaining phases of the project have the low water use the drip irrigation and the low water use type landscaping. But I would roughly say about 20% of the cost of the annual cost for the. And if you give me a few minutes, I can pull up the engineer's estimate and we can see what.
It's fine. It just seems that 2% is either more than reasonable or might be missing something.
Okay. Okay. Understood.
Is that a question?
I got a question for you.
Okay.
The LLMD covers the entire area that you showed in the map, which includes some open space, recreational area. So if the LLMD didn't exist, that open space could be used to build low-income housing?
Which open space are we talking about?
Well, any of the park areas or the recreational areas associated with that area?
This park area, this is a detention basin, is part of Hans Christian Andersen Park that was utilized as a detention basin for this subdivision.
Yeah, but I was thinking of up on the top part of it. There's a couple of recreational areas. There's all along the edge down below. We'd have to look at it. But the point is that LLMD right now restricts all of that as recreational or open areas.
I don't know if it's to answer your question, I don't know if it's the actual LLMD that restricts that. The LLMD is an assessment of taxes to maintain property. It was the actual conditions of approval of for the map, the original tentative map, and then also conditions of approval for the project that established that, and then it's the individual property rights of the property owners.
Okay.
They would do that. So if they wanted to come in, if someone wanted to come in and develop their lot and put in something a little more than an ADU, further subdivide their lot or something like that, they would be talking to Raphael and be given a long laundry list of things that they would have to do, which includes having to revisit the Solvang Mesa conditions of approval.
Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Wasn't the senior apartments on Pine Street that were built like in 2019 tied to Skip Mesa as part of their agreement to provide an area for low income?
I have no idea. I'm not sure.
I would like to look into
Part of the conditions of approval for Skip Mesa were to contribute to a fund that would help fund affordable housing. That might be where you're thinking.
Yeah, and BLH
It wasn't directly
development was the
tied,
one
but there was
that was
money
Pine
paid to
Street.
the city. I wanted to add conversation when I was presenting Roger's thing last time, came up about what happens if that light project doesn't happen. And you want to address that, Roger?
Sure. So, currently we've asked the residents. We've sent out flyers to the 169 properties. Which project they'd like to see as far as enhancing the lighting out there, mainly for Skip Mesa Drive as it approaches Mission and then up the hill. We've put together a few options and we've sent it to them. We're looking at anywhere from $35,000 to $45,000 is going to be the cost of the project, or there could be no project. And if so I've received several ballots so far. I'm waiting till the end of this month to count the ballots and figure out what project what the vote is. But if that project is not, if option 4 is selected, which is no project, then that money does not come out of the fund. And again, that we've budgeted for $50,000 for that project in the current budget in the engineer's estimate, and that was not part of the increase, the 2% increase. The 2% increase is to maintain the levels that it was at. Obviously, there would be a $50,000 drop in the fund. It's a relatively healthy fund at this point. But if the project doesn't happen, then that $50,000 would not be spent. There might be some other projects that we need to do in order to keep things rolling. That's part of the additional expense from last year, which is some of the infrastructure out there, some of the irrigation lines and other things are aging. So there were a couple of irrigation controller boxes that needed to be replaced. There was another irrigation main that needed to be repaired, and that all costs money to repair. And it's
Last city council meeting, somebody came up during public comment and said that if we did the lighting, and I believe your graphic showed it, that you'd have to trench all the way up that road, and as he put it, tear up a perfectly good road and patch it, which he wasn't too thrilled. There's the picture, yeah.
yeah. So that's option 1 and 2, yes.
Okay, and that goes how far up?
It goes up to Peterson, which is the next cross street. So it goes up to connect to the next PG&E light. So PG&E serve, just like every other neighborhood in the city of Solvang, PG&E owns the streetlights. And so it needs to connect to the nearest streetlight circuit, which is at the corner of Peterson and Skip Mesa Drive.
Thank you.
Just as another
Yes.
comment, I recently read, I don't know if it's passed, but I know there was some discussion about legislation for water conservation reasons, eliminating green spaces, or particularly lawns, decorative type lawns. So if that does come to fore, that's obviously a project that the district would have to expend money on, right?
Yeah, that is something that Chelsea brought to our attention, and I believe it is 2030 or 2035 where we need to have compliance with that. And so that would include, as I recall, that's for any decorative turf that is not functional, and functional meaning for a park or for, if it's just a decorative green space within a public right-of-way, it would need to be reverted to some of the plantings that we see in the later phases of Skip Mesa Drive, of the Skip Mesa subdivision.
So I bring that up just simply to emphasize the point that if this light project doesn't happen, those funds are going to be expended for those other types of expenses. So to the extent that you're paying a little bit now, it's money that we would not have to increase later.
Thank you very much.
One more question. Speaking of, when does this come back around to revisit? Do we do this every fiscal year? What's the term for this
It's
resolution?
every year around this time. We need to do it for the, it actually, everything has to be done by, I believe, the federal fiscal year, which is by September. So it's whatever the tax rolls start. So, we need to be, we're actually a little ahead of the game right now, but I think from speaking with the engineer, I think by July or August is when we got to get everything out to the county.
It will be on the tax rolls beginning in July that are due in December, but it's based on the county fiscal year, which begins July 1st.
Is there any reason why we couldn't do this every 3 years and put in an inflationary amount, or is this something we need to revisit every year?
It's something that needs to be done every year. I believe that's code. You could choose not to increase the rates. I mean, again, that's certainly within the purview of the council. The problem is money you don't collect now gets that much larger the next year. So pay me now, pay me later kind of a thing.
Yeah. In order to assess the tax rolls, it needs to be done every year, is my understanding.
Yeah, I was questioning the process more than anything else. Could we do it every third year and have 3-year amounts? Every year for the next 3 years, we'd have an
Prescribed an increase every year.
Yeah, prescribed an amount, but as I understand it, we have to have a public hearing
On everyone.
every year.
Okay.
To let everybody know, hey, your taxes, even if they're going to stay the same, your taxes are going to be assessed. Your property's going to be assessed a tax, and we got to do that every year. So
I would think you would not want to tie anything to inflation with the current administration right now.
Okay. Okay, shall we go to public comment, please? Ms. Elamine, I believe you're up.
Hi, I'm Denise Elamine, and I've lived in Skip Mesa for 10 years, and I really hate coming here and just hearing the city council say it's been raised 10 times, and no dollar amounts, no numbers, no data. It's not funny. It's money coming out of my pocket, and I pay into the general fund also. So if you cut the grass for everybody else besides Skip Mesa, why is Skip Mesa being set aside and we're treated differently? You need to come in here with some data. I think it's not funny, again, that you treat our assessment like it's nothing. As Dave Brown said, $23, what is that? Well, for some people, it may be the difference between eating dinner tonight and not eating dinner tonight, Mr. Brown. So why can't we get data from someone that we're paying, that's getting paid out of our assessment? All of this is illegal, and I just have to get the paperwork together, and I'm doing that. This is all just so illegal, what you guys are doing. You have no right to raise our taxes and our LLMD without the vote from the residents. We're the residents, we control everything, and you have to get 51% of us to vote to raise it. But you just ignore that, and you come here with your no data, and nobody in the city council cares because none of you live there. And that's fine, because when it goes to court, you'll all be participants in that. So what I'm saying is that I want to read to you from Randy when I told him that the Brightview contractor that we've had for 5 years, who doesn't do anything for the contract, I told him they don't follow it. And Mr. Randy told me that it's not within the city's purview to direct their work, as that would violate various state and federal labor laws. To the extent that you have notified us of your dissatisfaction, we have made them aware. I again apologize that you're not unhappy with the work that they have performed. That said, we have reviewed the work, and they do perform, and found it to be satisfactory. And when did you come out, Randy, and do that? And when did you come out, Roger, and do that? Are either any of you city councilors, do you take any time out to come and look at Skid Mesa? No, you don't. So please, don't raise my assessment. I'm saying no. And I think the vote should be for the residents and not Rogers. No data, Roger.
Oh, lovely insult.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else in the meeting that would like to speak? I don't have anybody on Zoom, so we'll bring it back to the council. All right, at this point in time, we are to do what with this particular session? Are we going to just accept the comments at this point and questions, or what?
No.
This is the second reading. Don't we approve this at this point?
No, it's not an ordinance, so there's no second reading, but I believe there's a resolution for this item that you would need to adopt.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adopt this particular motion? This particular resolution, excuse me.
I move to approve Resolution 24-1251.
And for the record, it would be the version of the resolution in the blue folder.
Yeah, it was changed, yeah.
Is that a different number?
No, same number, just corrected a few typos.
Typo's good.
I'll second that. Roll call, please.
You missed a typo.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes,
Motion passes 5-0.
thank you. Let's go on to item 6A, please. If you'd introduce that, Ms. Clerk.
Discussion and possible action to approve the request for a letter of public convenience or necessity for EndCorp Enterprises, Inc., DBA Gym Service Center at 2015 Mission Drive, APN 139-540-035.
Staff report, please.
So we received the request from Jim Service Center to go ahead and sign off on a letter of public convenience. So what this means is the California Department of Alcohol Beverage Control considers this area to be oversaturated with a certain amount of licenses. So the applicant, based on the staff report, the applicant has shut down sort of their service center and is looking to expand the convenience portion of it. So they are seeking a letter of convenience in order to provide beer and wine sales. As a part of the staff report, we did include a map of license types within 500 feet, as well as the ABC application and the reason and rationale for this. So we are looking for action from the City Council this evening on whether to approve this letter of convenience.
Thank you. Questions on the staff report from anybody?
I have a question. Can you confirm, I believe every other gas station in the valley sells beer and wine, correct?
I don't have those raw numbers datas, but typically when I've walked in, I have seen the coolers for.
That's what I'm thinking too, from what I've seen, that every other, from Buellton to San Ynez, et cetera, you can buy this. So the only place that's not being sold is at Jim's service station.
Well, they're currently, they don't have the license.
Correct.
So I would assume that they do not serve.
Oh, no, I'm
sell.
saying, yeah, of course, I'm not implying that. But from every other establishment does the same thing, and they're asking to do the same thing.
Typically, yes. So most
Okay.
convenience stores do have a beer and wine license to sell these type of goods.
Thank you.
Raphael, do you know what is the density rule that ABC license is referring to?
I do have the understanding of the rule. It's tied to the census. So, as with most of the ABC's rules, it's kind of it's trying to create a non-saturation of licenses. So, based on the U.S. Census numbers and based on the census places, they limit the number of licenses for convenience. Also, typically tied to that are the actual pure liquor licenses. So those that are such as a bar, nightclubs, and or restaurants, which is why when a restaurant opens, they're really seeking out that liquor license because they're based on the number of population. So as we go down in population, we lose licenses. As we go up, we gain licenses, and it's very rare that they go up.
Do they use a 500-foot perimeter?
No, they don't. That was just based on the last time city staff took this item. Typically, it's asked if it requires if we have any history of any code issues or anything to that matter for the service center, and we do not.
And so is the number of wine tasting rooms influencing or skewing our current license count?
No, because that's a different type of license. So that license is based on a whole different subset,
Okay.
not tied to the census data.
So these are only 20 license types, number
Cor-
20?
Correct.
Okay.
Raphael, is this the total number of licenses? Is that, or just in this geographic area?
Just in this geographic, just within our city limits. Those are the total number of convenience licenses.
Does a license have any limitations on hours?
Typically, yes. It's typically the business hours, and or I believe before midnight is the beer and wine ones, which.
And this license is for off-site consumption only?
Correct, off-site consumption only. So if you're cracking open a six-pack at the gas station, heaven help you.
And I believe that the store is not open till midnight. It's not open till 2 in the morning. It's open till.
Yes, I've had a late night council meeting 1 or 2, and usually it's closed. It's on the late night.
So we're not serving alcohol late in the evening.
No, you're not. And again, these licenses differ from, say, your typical actual liquor licenses, which some of them are sometimes tied to food sales, and if they're tied to food sales, then they're only allowed to go sometimes till 10, and then sometimes till midnight. If they're not tied to food sales, then you go to 2 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
But Raphael, since you seem to cruise by there quite often, I do buy gas there, but I actually have never been inside. Do they have other goods and products offered?
I did not go in, have not been inside, but I'm going to assume that they do have other items for sale.
Well, I will say I have gone inside, and they do offer a variety of drinks, snacks, jerky. They have a microwave available for the pastries that you buy there.
And Red Bull.
Your Red Bull. Yeah, they've done quite a bit of work to provide amenities to their customers.
Well, according to the application, they closed the service area and are using that whole area in there that's got the 2 garage doors apparently to do all of this.
It's a
right?
regular store now.
Yeah, setting out a store.
Yeah. Apparently we want more beer and wine far more often than we want to do our oil change.
Snacks, jerky,
Turkey, yeah.
Danish.
It's kind of the same thing.
Okay, at this point, do we have any public comment? I have no slips for this. Does anybody want to speak on this particular item? No, nobody on Zoom. We'll take it back to the council for final comments and a motion to approve the request of the letter of public convenience.
I'll make that motion to approve the letter of convenience for the Jim service station, please.
I'll second that, and I'd like to make just a comment that I'm worried about the businesses perceiving us as, it was commented earlier, as being sort of onerous on our codes and our ordinances and rules of this, doing business in the city, but it applies in the inverse too, which is we should not be making corner case exceptions either. So.
Roll call, please, Ms. Clerk.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Rona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much. So let's move on to item 6B. If you'd introduce that for us, Ms. Clerk.
Discussion and possible action to review conflict of interest code and introduce for first reading by title only ordinance number 240374, amending subsections A and B of section 111.2 designated positions of chapter 11 conflict of interest of title I administration to designate certain positions and make certain clarifying edits and make a determination of exemption under the California Environmental Quality Act.
Staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. So under the government code and incorporated by Solvang's municipal code, by July 1st of every even-numbered year, so we're 2024 and an even-numbered year, the city council must review the city's conflict of interest code and amend the code as necessary to address any changed circumstances. And this year, staff identified 2 new positions that need to be added as designated positions under our code, and some clarifying edits. Essentially, one section of the code referred to disclosure categories, which is a tool that some cities use if they have a lot of different positions, designated positions. They can say that this position, because of, I don't know, it's some kind of minor board or something, they don't have to fill out the entire Form 700 because their role is so much limited.
Special, yeah.
And that's helpful in those situations because, sometimes the form can be kind of onerous for people to fill out. And so, they elected to limit what certain designated positions have to file. Solvang has elected historically, and we're not proposing to change this, that everyone who's a designated position, and again, our list is quite short compared to other cities, just fill out the entire Form 700. And so we don't have a need to have separate designated disclosure categories. So for clarity, we've cleaned that language up to not refer to disclosure categories anymore. So that's all the changes that we're proposing, and there's a draft ordinance for your review that would be introduced this evening, and then also Anna Marie has included the notice that she will have to send in to the state as part of this biannual process.
Thank you. Questions on the city manager, city report, staff report?
How, pardon me, this already has identified some potential positions open. A year from now, another position's open. Will this be for that as well? Or do we have to specify each of the positions that are?
So in the interim, so this is a biannual thing. So in the off year or in the interim of your review, the city manager has the ability under the code to designate positions on an interim basis. And when he does that, then when it comes back to you all, those get added on as into the code on a not interim basis. So there's a procedure for how to handle that if a position comes up in the middle. We wouldn't bring it back to you. I mean, we could, I guess, but we wouldn't bring it back to you until the next even year review.
But we're assured that each of those positions, when they're filled, will adhere to these codes.
Yes. So under
immediately.
Right. And so under our code, if there's a new position created, the city manager would decide whether that is a position that needs to, essentially is it making decisions or is in a position that needs to file a Form 700, would make an interim designation. And then like these, we're bringing them before you during this review to finalize that and get them actually added into the code.
Typically, we would add it to the job description so that it was, as we create the new position, we would inform you that was the intent.
Okay. Any other comments? Questions, I mean? Do we have anybody in the public that would like to make a comment on this subject? I mean, it's a pretty exciting subject. Okay, and in this case, we'll bring it back to the council, and there is no vote on this. This is just a first reading, correct?
That's correct.
So unless there's any last comments, we'll move on to item 6C.
Oh, yeah, we need a motion, though, sorry.
It was a first reading. I thought it was just a review.
Well, you make the motion to introduce the ordinance. Apologies.
Well,
I will make a motion to introduce the ordinance, number 240374.
I'll second it.
roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now we'll move on to item 6C. If you'd introduce that for us, please, Ms. Clerk.
Discussion and possible action to provide staff direction on finalizing a joint powers agreement for the Santa Ynez Valley Basin Eastern Management Area Groundwater Sustainability Agency.
Staff report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Dave Fleischman, Assistant City Attorney. Thank you for having me. This is a continuation of a process that we have been involved in now for over 2 years. I was looking back at my notes to see when the first draft of this EMA, Joint Powers Authority Agreement, was circulated among the parties, and it had a revision date of March 2022. So we've been at this for over 2 years. I will say on the positive side, I think we're further along in that process than I had expected to get over the last couple of months. There are still some additional bullet points that we do need to hammer out. But just by way of kind of history, I'll give you a little bit of background of where we've been, and then we can talk a little bit about where we're going. So as mentioned in the staff report, we've been involved in negotiations with the Santa Ynez Water Conservation District, also with ID1 and the Santa Barbara County Water Agency for this JPA agreement. This currently would take the place of the Eastern Management Area GSA, Groundwater Sustainability Agency. And the reason for doing this is to limit the liability to each of the constituent members. So we're trying to set up a separate public agency, a joint powers authority, that would exist as a standalone. But it needs the consent of the 4 parties that have been negotiating this agreement. So that's what we've been spending the last 2 years trying to do. The end goal is kind of twofold. It would take over the responsibilities that are currently being done by the GSA, and it would have a power to impose any kind of pump charges or additional regulatory measures on its own without having the individual entities do that. It would also be able to defend any litigation individually rather than having the agencies represent themselves in such litigation. So there's some good reasons for setting up the JPA. I'll just note by the by, the JPA agreements have been inked and have been sent to the Secretary of State's office in the Central Management Area and the Western Management Area. Those agreements look very different than the one that's before you this evening. They have different provisions, they have different voting strengths, and I'll go through a couple of the other things that we've come to in the negotiation for this. It is a negotiation, there's been back and forth. I have carried the council's message regarding several of the issues from the last 2 council meetings to that negotiating table. I will say that it feels like shouting into the wind at times because this seems to have been taking on a life of its own, but we are where we are, and this is the agreement as it currently stands. One of the things that we have been spending a lot of time on is the concept of this agricultural director. The way the JPA agreement is currently set up is there will be 4 member agencies, each with a vote and each with a director. So Solvang would appoint one of its own council members as a director of the JPA who would participate in the JPA meetings. The other public agencies would do the same. The concept of this agricultural director has been pushed very strongly by the Water Conservation District and an outside entity called the Santa Ynez Water Group. The Water Group has participated in a lot of the discussions, in fact, pretty much all of them for the last year and a half, I would say. as to the creation of this JPA. That's unusual in that the Santa Ynez Water Group is not a public agency. It is a private entity, 501c6 private nonprofit entity that is registered with the Secretary of State. At our last meeting, we asked if the Santa Ynez Water Group would share its membership roles, and they've done that. It consists largely of large agricultural interests within the various basins. And I say basins, the Eastern Management Area, Central Management Area, and Western Management Area. But they're large agricultural concerns. So the concern expressed during those negotiations by the Santa Ynez Water Group and by the Conservation District was that agriculture was not being given a seat at the table. And so that's the concept for which they've been pushing this agricultural director, that the director would participate in the management of the JPA. So that's where we have been spending a lot of energy. I carried the council's direction that such an agricultural member is not necessary at this time. Again, shouting in the wind. The other entity, well, primarily the Conservation District, said that it was a non-starter, I believe was their words, if that agricultural director was not part of the JPA. So we've been working as best we can to put guardrails on that. One of the guardrails that we did agree to is that the agricultural director has to be appointed by the unanimous consent of the 4 member directors. So if Solvang or if ID1 or if the Water Conservation District or the County Water Agency decided we don't like that director that is being proposed for the agricultural position, then it's essentially a veto. So that's an advantage, I think, to all 4 agencies to make sure that if we are going to move forward with an agricultural director, that it is subject to the consent of all the other 4 agencies. How that agricultural director would be selected is set forth in the latest draft of the JPA agreement. The water group, Santa Ynez Water Group, would propose a person. There are certain membership requirements in the JPA agreement as it's currently drafted that agricultural director would have to qualify for. So they'd have to be a resident of the Eastern Management Area, they have to be a registered voter, they have to represent commercial agriculture, or be the owner of commercial agriculture. So that is the person or the pool that the Santa Ynez Water Group would be soliciting from, and then they would propose a member director, or I'm sorry, not a member director, an agricultural director to the other 4 agencies who would then vote on it. So that's the primary thing that we've been spending a lot of time on. Some subsidiary things that we've gotten out of the way is the voting strength. I'll note in the, let's see if I get this right now. The Central Management Area, the voting strength is equal. The City of Buellton and the Water Conservation District each have 1 vote. The county is a non-voting member of that JPA, so it's a 50-50 split there. In the Western Management Area, the JPA agreement provides for weighted voting, where the Conservation District has more votes than the other entities, but it is weighted similar in nature to the EMA GSA agreement that we have right now, where Solvang gets 1 of 11 votes. With the JPA agreement that we've been working on for the EMA, Eastern Management Area, the voting strength is equal. It's 1 agency, 1 vote. And presumably, if the agricultural director ultimately is appointed, there is a vote there. So it'd be a 5-member board of directors, and so the voting strength would be 1 per director in that situation. To provide additional guardrails as a result of that voting structure, there are a number of decisions by the board that would be subject to a supermajority. In other words, they would have to have a minimum of 4 votes to pass. I won't go through all of those, but some of the things that would require is the approval of a budget, updates to the groundwater sustainability plan, establishment of a pump fee. Those are going to require 4 votes at a minimum. And then the last thing that we really did not resolve at the time of our last discussions, which was May 1st, was the concept of seed money. Since this is going to be a separate public agency, it's always interesting spinning one of these up and asking the foundational questions. All right, who's going to sign to get a bank account? Who's going to get insurance for this? Who's going to be the person who's the executive director? So all of those decisions presuppose that there's got to be some money to function with those. So we had some discussions among the agencies about contributing some seed money. The numbers were between $100,000 and $250,000 to get the JPA up and running so that it would be able to go out and hire an executive director, to go out and be able to hire an agency lawyer, go out and be able to obtain insurance, be able to go and sign for a bank account and put that money in there. The concept was that the 4 agencies would put in some money, the 4 public agencies. The agriculture director would not be contributing, neither would the San Ynez Water Group. We did discuss that at some point, but that has fallen by the wayside. Doesn't sound like there's any interest in having, well, I'll say this. The water group doesn't sound as if it's interested. Solvang was interested in having the water group contribute to that, but in any event, so the 4 agencies were talking about contributing some seed money that would be potentially reimbursable by grant funding that could be received for the work that the GSA would be doing, because it would take over what is currently being done by the Eastern Management Area GSA. Late breaking news, I got an email a couple hours ago from the attorney for the Conservation District saying, yeah, they're not interested in contributing any seed money at this point. And they provided an updated draft that just lined through that provision. So that's gonna result in some additional conversations. But we had anticipated that might be the case. It does beg the question, okay, how is that seed money going to come? Is it now going to be just the 3 agencies putting it up? And if so, what does that mean? So that's one of the undecided or unresolved issues. I think that I have covered most of the highlights of the most recent negotiations. I would say a lot of the operational details of the JPA are not controversial. They're fairly well agreed to. The powers that it would have, where the offices would be located will be subject to the board of directors making a determination. There was some discussion about the how the JPA would hire an executive director and/or agency counsel. It will require higher vote totals if one of the members, one of the 4 agencies, supplies its legal counsel or supplies one of its employees. But otherwise, it's going to be, I believe it's supermajority otherwise. That's a lot of information to digest. I'm giving you all that information to let you know that there's not a lot left for the 4 agencies and the water group to discuss to get this agreement. So at some point in the very near future, this agreement is going to come to you for a thumbs up or a thumbs down. You will either authorize the city to sign it as a member of the JPA or not. If the city did not sign the JPA agreement, it is possible that the other agencies could continue and set up the JPA. They could seek to have the Department of Water Resources approve them as the groundwater sustainability agency for the Eastern Management Area. But there would be some question about, well, Solvang's in there. It's an overlap of that responsibility, and DWR would probably send us back to the table to figure that out. So that's a possibility down the road. But by and large, again, the whole point of doing this JPA is to have an entity separate from the 4 agencies that is responsible for doing the work of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And hopefully we get to that point, but as I mentioned in my staff presentation, there's still some things that I was directed to push against that did not end up carrying the day. So at this point, it's more by way of information. You're not being asked to approve this agreement this evening, obviously because we had some late-breaking changes that the Conservation District wants. But I'm happy to answer any questions any of you may have regarding the process getting to where we are. I know that some of you have contacted me individually with some concerns that you have. I'm ready to answer as many of those questions as I can. But to a certain extent, there's a lot of information in that agreement that I may have to get back to you. With that, I'll open it up to any questions the council may have.
I have a question. So basically, it's going to, are the options 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 4 as far as the funding and the seed money? It's either going to be all 4 or the Conservation District just says no, and the other 3 would go forward with funding that, and I would say no. I mean, I wouldn't want to get involved if they're not going to, if the Conservation District is not going to fund as well.
Well, I'll say there's also the option that nobody contributes, and then the question becomes, how does the JPA get spun up, and how does that happen? So we're doing the concept of seed money to just eliminate that discussion. There is an interim cost-sharing agreement that the city has signed on to. That could be used in the absence to set the JPA up. That's something we haven't really discussed in great detail because we had been talking about we're just going to put a pool of money in there. The difficulty with the cost-sharing agreement is it presupposes you know what the costs are going to be. When you do it by seed money, you're just putting money into a bank account, so to speak. Allow the JPA to get up and running and get that money reimbursed to the agencies, and then they're up and running on their own. They're doing that work by themselves. When they get a pump charge in place, then they can be self-sustaining. But to get to that point, it's going to take some money.
But if one quarter of that group is adamant that they're not going to fund, how do you go forward?
You could go forward with the 3, and the 3 could contribute that and put that up. There wouldn't be any reimbursement, obviously, to the Conservation District if they didn't put up any money, but presumably the money that the city of Solvang is putting up, which is our client, would be reimbursed from grant funds available to the JPA once it's up and running.
Okay, thank you.
Dave, on that point, could you remind us what the interim cost-sharing agreement says with regard to the 4 participants? Is the con district excluded from that cost-share obligation? Or did they choose to be excluded?
I'd have to go back and look at the cost-share agreement to be 100% sure what the split was or what the responsibility was. I don't remember off the top of my head on that one.
I don't either, but I don't remember that they excluded, so I guess I don't understand their position if they agreed to the interim cost-sharing agreement.
I don't understand it either.
It'd be good to know. It'd be good to know that. Sorry. Did you want to say something, Randy?
I was going to say, my recollection is that the cost was to be split 4 ways, so 25% each. In the event anybody opted to not pay, they had that option, which then it would basically increase the contribution necessary by the other 3 agencies. I mean, Peter's here too. I mean, am I, okay, so my recollection is correct.
I have a question. If there are parties that are interested in being part of the JPA, but they're not interested in or not able to contribute towards the financial feasibility of the organization, is it possible to have an advisory committee where maybe they still have a voice, but they're not necessarily, but you know, they don't have, I don't want to say sit at the table, but they're not a voting party. Because my concern is we have the Santa Ynez Water Group, and you know, I would love for agricultural parties to have a voice in this that are not necessarily represented by municipal, you know, jurisdictions. But on the other hand, you know, are we talking about, you know, produce growers? Are we talking vineyards? Are we talking cannabis growers? Hesitant to say, yes, you have a seat at the table when, you know, not all agriculture is the same and we're not sure, you know, who this party represents.
Well, based on the membership listing that the Santa Ynez Water Group provided us, I would say it's heavily weighted towards vineyards, not exclusively. I looked down the list, and it's a little difficult to tell from the spreadsheet they sent whether it involves any cannabis. I couldn't tell. It may or may not. But as far as the advisory seat, that's something we had pushed for from the very beginning, that, hey, you know, you can come and you can participate. You just don't get a vote, which is fairly typical, I would say. That's the way it is in the Western Management Area. That's the way it is in the Central Management Area. They don't have an agricultural director on their board. There was an agenda item on the most recent Western Management Area JPA meeting to discuss an agricultural member. I don't know what the outcome was of that meeting. I didn't attend, and they haven't posted their minutes. But they were discussing that possibility. With the Central Management Area, I'm not aware that that has either been agendized or discussed at that level. But it seems the push has been by the Conservation District and by the Water Group. In the Conservation District, my read of the tea leaves is 1 or 2 of the directors or board members of that have really been pushing for that.
Well, in response to that, there is the CAG. So there is an active body, and they have been actively participated, reported, met separately, and contributed pretty actively to the EMA. So there is a body that is recognized and can be used as a voice for other participants to the EMA. And I think they're pretty effective.
Couple of questions, if I may. First off, let's talk about the ag member. Does it have to come from that particular group, or can it come from any ag group?
The short answer to your question is it can come from any ag group. I will say that the Santa Ynez Water Group is actually named and baked into the agreement. They're the ones that will propose it. I would be not shocked, but surprised if the Santa Ynez Water Group nominated someone that is not one of their members to serve in that role. Now, it's not to say they couldn't, but it would seem to me that if they've spent all this time at all these meetings trying to negotiate a JPA agreement, only to nominate someone who is not one of their members, that would strike me as odd.
Yeah, it would strike me as odd as well. I had to ask the question, though. Pump charges. Not all those ag organizations listed, agricultural farms, wineries, there's a bunch of them, there was a long list, excuse me, have meters on their wells. So we have no way, the EMA has no way of assessing a pump charge. So how can we form a JPA that allows, you're saying the pump charges would pay back the initial fees. But if we're not getting pump charges on everybody, there's a disproportionate payment made by those that do have meters and can be assessed. Can that even be legal?
Well, it's a question of whether or not there's a power to impose an obligation to meter. And under Sigma, that may be one of the powers that the JPA would have. We'd have to take a look and see how extensive that is. But the concept is to protect the groundwater basin as a whole.
Right.
And that may be one of the measures that you look at. But that's something that we would have to discuss as the JPA. The EMA might have to take a look at that if the JPA doesn't get spun up, though. Did you have something else, Randy?
I was to say, my understanding, Sigma does allow, and there was discussion in some of our, at least staff meetings, about having a registration process, and that's one of the studies I believe that's going to be done and paid for out of the grant that the Conservation District has received, is kind of how to set that up. So there will be a process to encourage, in fact, require all pumpers to meter their wells.
Super. Thank you.
Can you clarify something, Dave? I just would like you to underscore something. There is a process being defined in the JPA that says this third yet additional party entity proposes the candidates for the ag seat membership. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that is only one way to accommodate that
No,
nomination or
there's-
application?
There's infinite numbers of ways that we could do it. We could set it up such that the four public agency members will solicit applications for an agricultural director from the Farm Bureau, the Cattlemen's Association, Santa Ynez Water Group, and any other agricultural groups representing agricultural interests within the EMA. It's just because the Santa Ynez Water Group has been at the table during these negotiations that we have the Santa Ynez Water Group. There has been discussions about the Farm Bureau. They haven't been at that table. Same with the Cattlemen's. The Cattlemen's Association submitted a letter of interest probably a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, saying that they really thought that it would be good to have an agricultural interest on these boards, but they have not been sitting at the table negotiating it. So that's why you see the Santa Ynez Water Group in this
The
agreement.
language says, sorry to interrupt you, but I want to be clear on what is actually saying. In 7.2F1, the Santa Ynez Water Group shall review all received applicants and submit one or more nominees That is the process.
Okay, then maybe I misunderstood the question. I thought that your question was, are there alternatives that we could draft into the agreement? That's what I was focusing on. As it's currently
Sorry.
worded.
Okay, yes,
Yeah,
but you're asking us for,
yeah.
what do you clarify what you're asking us to do with this JPA?
Well, ultimately, if you have concerns about the addition of the agricultural member, if that's a non-starter for Solvang, that's good to know. I've conveyed the direction given on January 24th that Solvang didn't think that it was necessary at this time, but would consider it at a later time. But now that we're getting down to the point where this agreement might get signed, if you cannot live with the way it is right now, with the Santa Ynez Water Group proposing a nominee and having a unanimous vote of the other 4 agencies, I need that direction because I need to go back and let the other parties know. Having unanimous consent allows the city to say, Santa Ynez Water Group, you gave us John Doe. We don't want John Doe. We think John Doe would not accurately represent agriculture in this situation. Then John Doe doesn't get it. It's a unanimous consent to appoint that member. If we were able to come up with someone that everybody thought, okay, that's someone that we can have at the table, 4 votes, unanimous consent.
So can you clarify too, there's more language that has me questioning how it's actually going to work. There is probably 15 bullet points of decision-making types that require a supermajority. Supermajority being 4 or more votes. Is there a scenario where the actual EMA board can function? Can they perform activities and work in the absence of an ag director being named?
Well, I think the way it talks about it, the decisions of the board are found in 11.3A and B, and it says it basically, except as otherwise specified, all decisions of the board require the affirmative vote of not less than 3 directors. Okay, so that's if it's not specified. If it's specified, then it requires 4 directors. And it says at least 4 of the 5 votes, regardless of the number of directors present. So if there were no agricultural director appointed, then it would require the 4 votes under that scenario.
So unanimous. The board has to be unanimous to do some major work, because if we read this carefully, this is really everything that the EMA is mandated to perform.
In short, yes, but the presupposed language in there is that there would be a 5th member. If there's not going to be a 5th member, and we work back through that, then we might change that voting requirement. So we got to this point on the assumption that there would be a 5th director at some point rather than 4.
I'm thinking there might be some delay, some process, but we've worked for, what'd you say? Over 2 years?
Over 2 years.
And we still have not really done the work of starting the assessment of pumping fees, metered. All of that work is yet to be done. Are we going to be waiting for more runway to name the ag seat director, which could take, we don't know. But we keep spending money on lawyers, but we aren't getting anything done.
And I share your frustration. The fact that the WMA and the CMA already have their JPAs up and running, they don't have an ag director. And that makes it very much easier. If we had not had this discussion about the ag director, I believe that EMA would have been signed long ago, and we would be underway with the stuff that needs to be done.
We could go down that path, but procedurally, I'm really looking for legal language assurance that the board can still operate and make decisions in a 4 board member scenario.
So in that situation, the proposed language that I could say is until such time as until such time as an agricultural member is appointed, the following decisions shall require a simple majority or 3 votes. But That's the same thing as a supermajority in that situation because it's going to be a 75%.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but you could have one dissent, and you could, as opposed to unanimous, you could, in theory, still get something done,
Right.
right?
Right. So that is good direction. That is something we could certainly propose. I don't know how long it will take to get an agricultural director if this council even wants to do that. I'm not presupposing that the final agreement that you say yay or nay will contain that. It's just I'm giving you a snapshot in time of what has been at the table.
So let me just make a point too, because the reason time matters now more than, say, before when we were working on this, the grant money has been, the initial wave of grant money has been released. And it is a fixed window of availability, which means we would, at some point, we will become ineligible to use that grant money because we can't get the work done in time to have it be reimbursed. So the more the clock winds, right, the less able the EMA is going to be able to have access to those dollars versus the Western or the Central Management.
To say nothing of the state budget, if that grant funding is available in future cycles.
Or worse, if it doesn't get consumed, right?
Correct.
And then it won't be available again. So getting to decisions is, to me, pretty time sensitive and crucial at this point. So I think if we can find those avenues to just make sure work can be done, that's going to be critical.
And that language might just change to say that until such time as the agricultural director is appointed, all decisions of the board shall require the affirmative vote of not less than 3 directors. And then you can get the work done.
Yeah. I like that. Okay, last comments? Yes, sir.
Well,
Or questions, I mean?
With regards to your issue on the seed money, I'll just share with you some experiences that we've had in other partnerships, that the non-contributing entity would not be on any of the bank accounts or have any management say for the duration of, until it's fully funded, either by grants or otherwise, but
Until they've paid their bills?
we've done that before, so you make progress. And they would not be on any bank, like I said, they're not signatories or anything else available.
So something along the lines of if a member agency does not contribute, it shall not act as the executive director, legal counsel, what have you, until
No management.
That's a possibility as well.
That's a good point.
Contribute a fair share.
Until it's funded. We're putting in the seed capital. Seed capital is supposed to come back.
I'm just suggesting that they say, well, I'll contribute $1. You know, so there,
Yeah.
I think
It
it'll be
could- yeah.
proportional share. or
Equitable
something like
share.
that.
Equitable.
Equivalent share.
Yeah.
And not to be substituted with staffing or labor.
Okay, that's something.
Just how we've done other
Sure.
Okay. Let's go to public comments, please. Ms. Elamine.
Hi, I'm Denise Elamine. You guys call this the JPA with the acronym, but it is the Joint Powers Agreement. So somebody woke up one morning and decided that they wanted to have the power over groundwater, which is a commodity. It's sort of like, you know, when people came to this Solvang area and people were already here and they took the land, they put the flag down, and now they own it. So somebody woke up and they decided they're going to be joint powers and they want the money to come together so that they can control groundwater. Groundwater is a commodity. It's going under people's homes. It's going under people's businesses. It belongs to their property. And now we're going into another joint powers agreement with the same people that we had the agreement. And I'm so happy, Randy, you told me that we did pay off the lawsuit You didn't say how much it was and how long we paid on it, but we have finally paid it off. ID1, we don't owe them anymore. So why not go into a joint agreement with them again so we can pay them again? Because they probably miss all that money that we were paying them. I don't think it's been long since we stopped paying them. So I can't believe that I'm here listening to people talk about going into a joint powers agreement over groundwater that is under somebody's ground, that they own the land, and it's basically all you guys want to do is charge a pumping fee. And they will take you to court until their grandparents come back to life. Believe you me. I have a family member who has a well, and he says he'll spend every dime he has going to court. So I understand exactly what you guys are talking about when you're getting these joint powers, so that it's nothing but a power grab to charge a pumping fee to pump this water out for when people get water out of their own well, that you guys get a piece of that and you charge them to pump stuff off of their own land. It's not going to happen. We're paying this attorney a lot of money for a long time for nothing. They will keep you in court forever. But if you want to do that, that's fine. I'm on record on the 2024, and in a couple years, then I'll just bring my records here, and we'll see that we'll be still in the same spot.
Thank you very much. All right, anybody else in the public want to make a comment? If not, we'll bring it back to the council for last comments. And what we need to do is provide any additional information to staff on what we'd like to have beyond what we already said, I believe. I mean, have you got a pretty clear idea of what we've been asking for, Mr. Attorney?
Well, I'm clear on the status of the ag director. You don't think that it is necessary at this time. You would be open to it at a later date after the JPA is up and running. If we get to a final draft of the agreement and it comes to you and that is still your position, then you will give a thumbs down to the agreement, presumably because it contains that requirement. I will do my best to convince the other entities of the possibility of that happening, but I don't know that they're going to be particularly moved. So ultimately, you're going to have to make a hard decision on whether or not to allow the ag director onto the board. As I mentioned, we have put in the guardrail that it has to be unanimous. So Solvang has another opportunity to look at that in the future once that director is put forth, if that's the way the final agreement comes forward. But other than that, it sounds like I've got some good direction on changing the vote structure until such time as the ag director is on board, if that's going to be the case, and then a limitation on serving in an administrative role for the JPA in the absence of a fair share contribution by an agency.
One more thing would be the timing. And I would just say that, not knowing what the timing is going to be for the funding of these this project, but we're going to have a drop dead date somewhere on the calendar.
We originally had put some language in the JPA agreement, and I'll pull up the other draft so I can give you an accurate understanding of what that timeline was looking like. It was fairly quick. Let's see, we were talking about within 30 days of an invoice by the GSA, each member shall contribute. So it would be fairly quick after the signing of the JPA agreement. The JPA would say, okay, send us the money now. And it would be paid very quickly. So that would get the seed money into the bank account. And they would presumably be able to get up and running.
Yeah, I wasn't speaking of the seed money. I was speaking of the grant monies and the expiration of those.
Okay.
That is our time constraint.
That is absolutely a time constraint.
That's what I want on the calendar. It's that drop dead date.
Okay. We'll take a look at it.
I believe the grant, you have to submit your final reimbursement request by June of 26, I believe, is what the grant was given to Conservation District, so.
Of this year, Randy?
2026.
This year? Oh, 2026, yeah, yeah.
June of '26, so it's basically 2 years from now.
Okay,
Just to clarify on that point, work has to be performed and then you can submit your grant request. So that, it sounds like 2 years is a long time, but you have to show you actually did something. And so imagine you got to do some assessment work.
And to make it clear, the grant is a reimbursement, so the money has to be spent first, which is why the seed money is necessary. And then you get reimbursed by the state, and the reimbursement request has to be submitted by, not just spent, but actually submitted to the state. So we've got less than 2 years really for that work to be performed.
wow, it's going to get tight. Okay, in that case, if staff has their direction.
Thank you, council. I appreciate it. It's been a long road, and I know there's a lot of information to digest, but I appreciate all the inputs that all of you have provided over this period. Got a few more to do, and hopefully we'll be bringing back at least what the final document is for you to consider.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, unless there are any final comments from the council, I think we're done for the evening. You have one more? I don't know if we're going to allow that, Robert.
I still would like to look into the Saturday, Sunday business and what that does to businesses in town. And then, the Weekham harm, and then the other one was what was the first one I brought up? Oh, about, what was the other one I brought up? The sign ordinance.
The signs, yeah.
And only an observation.
Well,
when the city pays this, but then there's a grant, but then you get a reimbursement, and then you work on this, and I'm like, it's like when the music stops, then who has the money? It's like one big circle with consultants and grants and city spending, et cetera. Where does it stop? It's just interesting to me. That's all I'm saying. Thank you. Good night.
we can't address it because it's not on the agenda, but I
Correct.
believe Raphael is coming back to us with an update of procedures and policies regarding some of the issues that have been brought up.
One of the items on the council goals is the update code, and this is definitely one of the items on that list.
Yep. Thank you. In that case, ladies and gentlemen, at 8:37, we are going to call this meeting to a conclusion.